really slow and there's listening to it. The center, you can see that moment because I am going to. Hi guys, this is Edward and welcome to the last video on this Snake game tutorial series. On this video, we're going to start tracking the score and showing it to the user. We will make a heat effect for when the snake collides, and we're also going to create an intro menu to start the game as well as a game over one. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's go to the stake script and until the move function. After we have moved the other Minisnakes, we are going to check collision between the head and the other Minisnakes. So I just going to add that as a comment. So we'll say check collision between head and mini snakes. All right, so in here, the first thing we will do is that we'll create a for loop. So we'll say for I in range. So the range is going to go from 1 to mini snakes that size. So this way we are going to avoid the first mini snake, which is the head. And in here, we are going to ask if head that get rectangle, and we'll ask if intersects with mini snakes I, so the current mini snake that we are looping through that gets rectangle. So we'll get the rectangle of that current mini snake. And in here, what we'll do is just to emit a signal, which I'm going to add that as a comment here. All right, so in order to create the signal, let's go to the top of the script. And in here, I'm going to declare a signal named heat. So this is the signal that we're going to be emitting. And this signal is going to take as an argument mini snake heat, which is going to be of type mini snake. So this way, every time we emit this signal is going to give us a mini snake, which is the mini snake the head has collided with. All right, so back to the function. Here, we can just remove the comment and say heat.emit. So the signal is going to be emitted, and we're going to pass mini snakes, and pass the current one. So we'll say mini snakes I. And after that, we are just going to break this loop because we don't want to keep checking. And I have just noticed that we are getting an error here saying that the property size is not found in the array. And that is because this is not a property, this is actually a function. So I'm just going to add the parentheses here. So now that we have the signal being emitted, let's go to the ready function and let's connect to that signal. So I'm gonna say heat.connect, and I'm going to pass on heat, which is a function that we're going to create down there. And notice that I have put this underscore in front of the name of the function, so that means that this function is not supposed to be called anywhere else. So I'm gonna copy the name, and down here I'm just going to declare that function, and it won't return anything, so it will return void. And as a parameter, I'm going to give it mini snake of type mini snake. So in here, because we want the snake to stop moving, I'm going to call the function toMove.kill. Let's run the project to see what we have. And I'm going to make the snake grow by hitting the space bar as we have defined before. And when I collide it, we can see that the snake stops moving, but there is a problem, and that is that the head of a snake is being covered by the body. And that is because it stops moving right after it has collided here. So, and because of the other mini snakes have been drawn after this head, after the head, we have these effects. So what we want to do to avoid this happening is that we want all the mini snake to move one step back, so they're going to go to their previous position. So let's go ahead and go to the Minisnake script, and in here we're going to create a function named go to previous position, which is going to return void because we don't want it to return anything. And what this function is going to do is just going to set the current position equals to the previous position. So now that we have this, I'm just gonna click on save, And back to the snake script, once the snake gets hit, and after stopping the snake with the twin move kill, we're going to make a for loop for all mini snakes. So that will be for mini snake in mini snakes. And in here, we're going to call mini snake that go to previous position for each one of the mini snakes. Click on save. I'm going to run the project. And got getting an error here saying that the parameter name Minisnake has already been declared. So this parameter here, we are actually not going to be using in this function. So I'm just going to call it mini because we don't want it to interfere with the Minisnake declaration we're doing here. I'm going to save it and run the project again. And I'm going to try to collide and see. All right, and there we have it. We can see that the snake, it looks like it is stopping, but it's actually doing the same as it was before. It was colliding when it was here, but the head and all the other mini snake went back to the previous position, so it looks like it is stopping right after. All right, so now that we have made that, we just need to give the user feedback for when the snake is colliding. So we want to create a square here that we're going to be naming hit spotter. That's going to be red and it's going to be pulsing or flashing, so the user knows when the head collided. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a node to the node. I'm going to rename it hit spotter, and let's add a script to it, which is going to be saved in the scripts folder, as hit spotter.gd. Looks correct. So let's hit create. I'm going to remove all of these comments here really quick. And the first thing we will do here is to get a reference to the snake. So I'm going to declare a variable named snake, which is going to be equals to percentage snake, and we're going to cast the value as snake. And let's not forget to add the already keyword so that it gets created when it's actually ready to be used. All right, so since this node is going to be creating a rectangle at the hit position, let's create two properties, one named hit spot and the other one is going to be named hit color. And the hit spot is going to be equals to a rectangle 2D, and we're going to pass as argument a vector 2 dot 0, which is going to be the position at the top left corner, and as the size we're going to pass game dot cell size. And for the color, we're just going to set it equals to color dot transparent, which is a color that comes by default here in Godot. And now that we have defined how we want it to be drawn, we are going to create the function. We are going to declare the function draw. And in here, we're going to call the function draw rectangle. And we're going to pass hit spot as the rectangle. And for the color, it will be hit color. Oops, hit color. There we go. And since we want this drawing to always be updated with the position, in the process function, we're going to call q redraw. Now, as for the actual position of the spot, we want to know when the snake gets hit and update that position to the mini snake that was hit. So here on the already function, we are going to get the snake that hit signal and connect a function which we're going to be calling on snake hit, which we're going to create down here. And you're just going to return void. Now, of course, this function is going to be getting an argument which is coming from the signal. So we're gonna get as a parameter mini snake hit, which is going to be of type mini snake. And here we're going to set the hit spot that position equals to a vector 2, which is going to take the mini snake hit that the signal is sending us, and we're going to get from it the current position. Now, I am making this a new vector because we want a copy of it and not a reference. So that is something that is really important. And after that, we want to set the heat color equals to colors dot red, which is a color we have previously defined on this file. I'm going to go ahead and save, and let's try it out. All right, so I'm gonna make the snake grow, and when I get hit, we can see that something really interesting is happening. And this is happening because the actual spot position we are getting is coming after all the media snake has gone to their previous position. So if you can see, the hit spot should have been here, but instead it's at the previous position where it should has been. So to fix this is going to be really simple. I just close this. So let's head back to the snake script, and in here on the onHit function, just before moving all the media snake to their previous position, we are going to call a special keyword called await, and we're going to await for the async tree, which we can get with get tree, and we're going to get the signal called process frame. So what this action is doing here is that it's going to stop this function until the process frame of the get tree gets called. So it's going to wait for the next frame. So we first kill the movement, then we're gonna wait for the next frame so the engine does everything else it needs, and then it comes back here. So to better illustrate what is happening here, I have created this simple presentation. So here at the top we have the hit signal, and we have two listeners listening to it. The listening one, which is the snake script, then the listening two, which is the hit spotter. And then after that, the engine is going to do everything else it needs to take care of. And in the listening one, we are stopping the movement and then moving all the mini snake to the previous position. Once this first listen is done doing everything it needs, the listener 2 comes in and it gets the hit position of the mini snake that we have hit. So you can see that the mini snake have already go to the previous position. So this is why this is not the correct value. So what we're doing here is adding a new action, which is awaiting for the next process frame. And when this happens, this action here, moving to the previous position, is going to happen on the next process frame, on the next frame of the game. So it will be down at the bottom here. So the first listening stops the moving and then waits. And then we just go to the second listening, which is going to get the position, which is going to be the actual position. Then the engine do everything else, goes to the next frame, and we have then all the media snake going to the previous position. So back here to the editor, let's just start it out. I'm going to run the project, and let's just collide with a mini snake, and there we have it. We can see that the hit spot is at the right position, and all the mini snake has also moved to the previous position, so everything looks perfect. Now we do want the feedback to be a little bit better. We want to animate and this red spot to be fading in and fading out. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so let's go back to the hit spot script. All right, so in order to do the animation for the hit color, I'm just going to first remove the line of code because we don't want to set the value like that. So we're going to create a new variable, which is going to be twin pulse, and we're going to create a new twin and set the transition, and we want to set a transition to twin transition. I believe this means cycle, or this is just the equation that it's using. And I have found this one to be really nice looking. And let's also set the loops, and by not passing any value, it's going to loop forever. All right, so we have defined the twin. We just need to define the sequence and the animation itself. So we'll say twin pulse dot twin property, and the target is going to be self. The property is going to be hit color, and the final value is going to be colors dot red. The duration is going to be that 55 seconds. The easing to twin that is out. So by having this transition and this easing, we're going to be getting an animation curve that looks like this one. So the animation starts really fast, and as it gets closer to the final value, it just goes more slow. All right, so we have the heat color going from transparent to red, and now we want it to go from red to transparent. So we'll say twin pulse that twin property. So it's going to be self as target, heat color as property, and color that transparent. Color that transparent. The duration is going to be the same, 0.55 seconds, and the easing is going to be twin is in. So we are getting this one that starts really slow and then goes really fast. So what I want to accomplish here is that the hit spot stay longer in the red value, right? And to make it even more evident, I'm going to set a delay of 0.1 seconds. So this way the hit spots at the red state is really visible and it stays there for longer. Let's run the project to see what you have. I'm going to hit a Minisnake. And there we have it. This is the effect that we're getting, which I think it looks pretty cool. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to show and have a score system. So let's go to the game script. And in here, I'm going to declare a variable named score, which is going to be equals to 0. And also we want to get notified when the score has changed. So I'm going to declare a signal named score changed, which is going to have as argument new score, which is going to be of type int. And since we want this signal to get emitted every time the score changes, I'm going to create a setter for this property. So we'll say set equals to underscore set score. And this is a function that we're going to be creating down here. And this function won't return anything, but this function will get a new value. So as a parameter, you'll have new score of type int. And in here, we are just going to set score equals to the new score. And then we are going to emit the signal. So score change dot emit, and we're going to pass the new score value. And now that we have defined this here, we just need to actually increase the value. So let's go to the snake script. And in here, after growing the snake, we're going to call game.score and just increase it by 1. All right, so in order to try this out, I'm going to save here, go back to the game script, and when setting the score, let's print just some text. We'll say score, and we want to pass the score value. Let's run the project to see if it works, and I'm gonna hit space, and every time the snake grows, we see that we are getting 1 for some reason. So let's see what happens. Go to the snake and increase in, okay, I just make an arrow here, so it will be plus and equals to increase it by 1. Run it again, and I'm gonna hit space, and then we have it. Every time the snake grows, the score value increases, and it also works when I get a food. So we can see it here. All right, let's close this, go back to the game script, and just remove this for testing. All right, so now that we have it working, we just need to have a visual representation of the score. So let's go to the 2D view, and in the world node, let's add a new child node, and I'm going to add a canvas layer. And if you click here on the dock, you're gonna see that it says that this node is useful for heads-up display and UI and showing things like the score and just elements that give feedback to the user. So I'm going to rename it HUD, and let's add a label node to it. I'm going to rename it LBL score, and I am going to set an anchor preset to it. So I'm gonna put it to the top center. So it is right in the top center of the canvas, and I'm going to put AG as placeholder to it. Let's make the horizontal alignment center, and down here I'm gonna set its size to about 32 times 3, so it occupies 3 cells of the grid. I'm gonna recenter it again. Let's go way back. Let's go down here, and the font I'm gonna set it to the font we have previously imported here. And you can see that it looks a little bit blurry, and that is because we need to change the import configuration of it. So double click on the font file, and in here the oversample, I'm just going to increase it way up to 10. Hit import, and you can see that it now looks pixelated. All right, so let's set the modulate color to the white color that we have defined before. So let's go to the color script. I'm gonna copy the white color, and on the label, I'm just gonna paste it here. I am also want to give the bounding box a background color. So here on the styles, I'm going to create a new style box flat, and let's edit it. And for the background color, I'm gonna use the black color that we have defined previously. Let's go back to it, and in here I'm just gonna paste it, and I'm going to divide the opacity by half so that it is 50% transparent. So now that we have the score looking good, I'm just going to add a script to it so it tracks the current score. And let's just make it a built-in script and name it LBL score. Hit create. I'm just going to remove everything here. And the first thing we will do is to set the opacity to 0 because we don't want it to show right at the beginning. So we'll say modulate dot A for alpha, and we'll set it to 0. And then we want to connect the on score change signal. So we'll say game dot score changed dot connect, and we're going to connect it to the function on the score on score changed, which is a function that we're going to be creating down here. So I'm just gonna say function, put the name here. It's just going to return void, and of course we want the new value. So this is going to be the score, which is an integer. And in here, the first thing we will do is to set the text property, which comes with the label node here, and set it equals to str score. Now this str function, what it does is just converts anything you pass to it to a string. All right. So because this is a number. Now the next thing we want to do is to animate the score. So it fades in and then fades out. So for that, let's create a twin property here at the top. It will be twin of type twin. And then here on the on score changed, we will say twin equals to create twin, and we want to set the transition to twin dot transition sign so that it is smooth. And let's create the first sequence, which is going to be fading in. So we'll say twin dot twin property. We're going to pass self of the target. The property is going to be modulate, and with the modulate we actually want to target the alpha channel, so we'll pass semicolon like this. So we'll pass colon like this, and then A, which is the property for the alpha channel, and then we'll set it that we want the final value to be 1, and it's going to last for 5 seconds, this transaction. And let's set the easing to be equals to is out. And then the next thing is going to be really similar. So we're going to fade out. So I just going to copy this, and the final value is going to be 0, and the easing is going to be is in. So by doing this, we are having a transition with the sign, and we are having it signing in and then signing out. So it is smooth, just like so. Now, something that I want to prevent from happening is that it might happen that the score changes while a transition is happening. So let's say that we get a score and then it is transitioning in, is fading in, and then just before the animation or the twin ends, we got another score. So this one's going to get called again, and it will come here. So that could be a problem. I'm not sure. It might happen sometimes. So I'm just going to ask here if twin is declared and twin that it's running. And if that is so, then we'll call twin that kill. So we're asking if the twin has a value, and if it has a value and it's running, we're just going to kill it. Let's start it out to see if it works. I'm gonna hit space, and we can see that every time we get a score, the label shows with the current score, which is awesome. All right. So the next thing is going to be to have a game over overlay and a message saying that we can restart the game. So let's go ahead and do that. So in order to accomplish that, we need to find a way to let everybody else in the scene, so other nodes, to know when the game is over. So the best place to do that is on the game script because it's global. And in here, I'm going to declare a new signal that is going to be named game over. And this signal, we want to emit it when the snake has hit another mini snake. So let's go to the snake script. And here, when we're checking the collision and we're emitting the hit signal, we are going to call game over emit. So yeah, there we have the system to know when the game is over. And now we just need to have a visual representation to know when the game is over actually to the user. So I'm just going to go ahead here and add a container node, a console node actually. I hit create, and I'm just going to name this CNTR game over. So CNTR is for container. It's going to be everything related to the game over. And I'm going to set the L components to be the full canvas, like so. And in here, I'm just going to add a new node. It's going to be a color rectangle node. And let's add also a label node to it. So label, I'm going to rename the color rectangle to color rect like this, and the label to LBL game over. Now for the game over test, I'm just going to pass this, which says press enter to play again. And this one, I'm going to put it right in the middle, and the color rectangle, I'm going to make the full canvas. And what we want to do here is for the color, we want to set it to the black color that we have defined. So I'm going to copy this one and paste it here and put the opacity to be 50%. And of course, this one we want it to be, let's see, we want it to be in the center. For the font, we want to set the font file that we have defined before. So quick load and just open it up. There we have it. The style, we're just gonna leave it like that. And for the color, it is white, but we want it to be the white color that we have defined, which is a little bit different. And let's set the modulator to that value. And there we have it. This is the visual representation for the game over screen. Now we just need to add the behavior to it. So let's add a new script. It's going to be a built-in. I want this one to be object empty. Yeah, this looks fine. and I'm going to rename this script cntr game over. So in here, we're going to create the ready function. So let's say function, the ready. And in here, the first thing we'll do is to hide this node. So we are making sure that it's not getting drawn at the beginning, because of course, this is just the game over screen. And after that, we're going to set the modulate that a value equals to 0. And this is because this is the value that we're going to be animating. Of course, we want to be notified when the game is over. So we're going to be using the signal that we have created in game, that game over signal. And let's connect a function to it, which is going to be on game over. So I'm going to copy that out, and let's just create it down here. So this function is not going to return anything, and also it's not expecting anything. And the first thing we will do here is to call the function show, so that it is being able to get drawn on the canvas. For scroll, it's still not visible because the alpha is set to 0. And we are going to then create a twin here and call the function twin property, and the target is going to be self. The property is going to be modulate a, which is the alpha value, and then the final value is going to be 1, and finally the duration is going to be 0.2 seconds. So let's run the project to see if this is actually working. And when the snake hits, we can see that we got the overlay and it's fitting in and saying press enter to play it again. Of course, we don't have that functionality yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just close this, and we need to add the functionality to the game. So let's go to the game script, and in here I'm going to create a new function which is going to be named restart, and it's not going to return anything. And in this function, we're going to set the score equals to 0. And we are also going to get the scene tree and call the function reload current scene. So this function is going to reset everything in the scene. It's going to destroy all of this node and it's going to instantiate them all over again. But if you remember, the game node, the game script, is not part of this scene, so it's not getting destroyed. This is the reason why we need to set the property score that is holding to 0, so it gets reset back to 0. Let's head back to the game over container, and let's first save here. And this game over, what we want to do first is we want to wait for a certain input action that we're going to be defining, and after that we're going to call the function game that restart. So let's define the input action that we want to use here. So let's go to the project settings, and in the input map, I'm going to add a new action called start. Hit enter, and the action is going to be space, and also it's going to be enter. All right, this fine. So in here, we're going to wait while this action has not been pressed. So we'll say while exclamation mark input that is action pressed, and we're going to pass the start action. And if this action has not been pressed yet, we're going to await for the next idle frame. So we'll say await get 3 and get the process frame signal. So this is something that we have done before, kind of. So what this is doing is creating an infinite while loop, and this while loop is going to be happening, and it's just going to stay here until the action start has been pressed. Otherwise, it's just going to be waiting and waiting for the next handle frame. Okay, so let's just try it out to see if it works. I'm going to collide, and then we have it. We have the hit spot. It's saying to press enter to play again. I'm going to press enter, and there it goes. It actually gets resetted, and we can see that the score goes back to 0. All right, so the next thing is going to be to have an introduction UI to start the game. So I'm going to close the game. And actually, just before doing that, I want to do something really quick, because if you notice, when the game is over, we show this overlay, but the score disappears. And we want that to stay there. So let's go ahead to the label score script. And in here, I'm going to connect, and in him, I'm going to connect the game over signal, and I'm going to connect it to a function name game over, which we are going to create down here. So that will be function on game over. It's going to return void. And in here, we are going to do pretty much the same that we're doing here. We're going to first kill the twin if it is running, and then we're going to create the transition to it. And after that, we are just going to set the alpha value. In this case, it's going to be to 1. And yeah, this looks fine. So let's try it out to see if it works. I want to collide, make sure that the score label had disappeared. And when it does, we can see it here, but it's actually being drawn behind the layout of the game over. So I'm just going to grab it and move it down here. Or maybe just move this one up. Sort it out. And all right, there we go. We have the overlay for this showing. Okay, so now we can take care of the game start one. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this one, and I'm going to rename it game start. And this label, I'm going to name it game start label. And for the text of it, I'm going to copy a text that I have here, which is going to be, all right, which is going to be presented to play. And I just want to hide this one so we can see it better, and just make sure that it's actually in the center. And I think that is pretty much everything we need to set up here. Let's see. And yeah, there we have it. So we now just need to make the logic to know when the game actually starts. So let's go to the game script. And in here, I'm going to create a signal named game start. And this signal is going to be emitted right when the ready function of this node gets called. So let's say function, the ready one. And here we're going to emit the signal game start. So that will be game start that emit. Now, because this is being emitted right after the ready function of this node, we need to be careful, because other nodes that might want to listen to the signal, maybe they are not created yet. So something that we are going to do to fix that is just to await for get tree that process frame. So by doing this, we are waiting for the next idle frame and making sure that everybody who wants to listen to it is already listening before it gets emitted. So we just need to add the behavior to this container. So let's detach the script because it is duplicated from this one, and add a new one. It's going to be built in, and I'm going to name it cntr game start. Hit enter, and in here we're going to have the ready function. So function ready, and on the ready function, the first thing we're going to do is to show this node, just to make sure, because maybe while we are editing here we might hide it or show it. I'm just going to leave it hidden for now. So we're going to make sure that it's being shown, and then we're going to get the tree and set the game to pause. So let's say set pause to true. And when doing this, everything else and all of the nodes that are running are going to get paused. So things like the movement of the snake is not going to be happening. All right. The next thing we want is to wait for the input action. So I just going to go to the Gameover script and then copy this line of code, go back, and in here we are going to wait for the start action to happen. And once we have pressed enter, which is the start action, we are going to get the tree again. And after getting it, we are going to set the pause to false. So we are on pause in the game and everything is going to start running as normal. And finally, we are just going to create a twin to animate the alpha channel so it fades out. So that will be create twin property of self as a target. The property is going to be modulate a, and then the final value is going to be 0, so it fades out, and the duration is going to be 0.2 seconds. Let's run the game to see if it works, and we have a message saying press enter to play. I'm gonna press enter, and there we have it. We have the game running and working with the score and also a collision with feedback. Well guys, this is going to be it for this video series. I have a lot of fun making it, and I really encourage you guys to follow along and take your time while making it. I will leave the link of the project files in the description, and until next time, see you later.